just started crying. I just started crying in the middle of my room with like my Unity app still open on my laptop and like my college apps also open on my other laptop. I was in a mess basically.
The number one high school founder complaint that I normally get is when you don't have enough time to work on both school and startups.
My dad knocked on my door and he was like, "Hey, like, are you gonna eat? Because it's like you have to go soon, but like dinner's ready." He came in and I was like, I can't, I have so many things to do, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, you have to like go though. And I was like, yeah, I know. And
Ingrid is currently in her 4th year of building a VR solution for dementia patients while also studying cognitive science in UPenn.
back when like I was at the peak of developing this project, I was also at the peak of high school.
In high school, she also did a handful of ECs.
When I got to the pool, when I got into the swimming pool, like I had completely just like MMRTD and college took a backseat in my head. Like it was the least of my concerns. And all I did was focus on like swimming, my routine, my teammates, and everything.
But here's how her 17-year-old self viewed startups.
I would have like schoolwork and everything on weekdays, and training, I can't change that. They're like set times. But I would usually block out my entire Sundays to work on MMRTD. And so it would be like from morning, and I just kind of like work on like whatever parts that I felt like needed to be worked on that day. But it really helped because it kind of like just gave me like an allocation of like, okay, Sundays are to work on MMRTD, and then I get a break at the end of the day, which is to go swimming.
Let's dive into Ingrid's high school journey so you can replicate the exact process that she took
and set yourself up with a successful project entering college.
Let's get into it. Fellow Gen Z founders, today we have Ingrid Chan here, the founder of MMRTD, a multi-sensory therapy VR headset solution for dementia patients, features on multiple different platforms, including the Craig R. Barrett Award for Innovation winner and multiple national news sources, including CNN, SCMP over here in Hong Kong. In this podcast today, we will be focusing more on the process of how you got initially started during high school and managed to scale this into a nation-recognized solution. And just setting some context for the audience here, you started this project at around 2020, which is surprisingly 5 years ago. And for me, it feels like such a short time after both of your grandmothers were diagnosed with dementia. And personally, you motivated yourself to self-learn VR coding. And the last time we actually chatted, you mentioned this interesting thing where your entire journey was more of a self-learning process. So just to get things started off, could you talk about how you saw your personality or character grow over the past 5 years?
Ooh, oh, that's a really good question. So initially, I actually was not like a computer science kid at all. And I actually decided not to take computer science in IGCSE as well. So you could say like I was straight up not interested. But obviously, given the foundations of my project, you can tell it's like, oh, like I need to do coding, I need to do like Unity coding and programming. And so I would say one of the biggest things that changed and like grew personally was definitely being open to learning new things and keeping like an open mind to and like realizing that oh, just because you initially wasn't really interested in something doesn't mean that you wouldn't find it intriguing later on. And so that was one thing that I learned the most was that like I'm actually not too afraid to try something that I find boring, and it actually in fact turned out to be something that came easier than I expected it to be, and something that could ignite some sort of passion in me. Yeah.
Hmm. So in terms of like diving into more specifically in like the past 5 years, in terms of more like, your personality or strategies or like, the soft skills that you personally build, how have
Mhm.
you seen startups transform your overall character?
You would have like grown to be someone a lot more flexible and learn how to adapt to all sorts of different situations and not crack under stress. Because I feel like 5 years ago, which is such a long time if I do think about it, oh my goodness. But 5 years ago, I feel like I was very vulnerable to stress, and like a small thing would hit me pretty hard. But I realized that like now that I look back throughout my entire 5 year journey, like I've gone through so many lows, and obviously like I've had highs, but those lows got me like really low. But I surprisingly pulled through. And I feel like a lot of startups or like entrepreneurs say this, they're like, oh, like resilience is the biggest like thing that got me to where I am, right? And I totally agree with that because like throughout developing a project or like coming up with an idea, you're constantly like seeing where your project is failing, or like you're constantly seeing where your project lacks. And I feel like it takes a lot of resilience and genuine passion to like, okay, like I have this problem right now, but with effort and with time and with patience, I can fix it. And so that's definitely something I would tell myself 5 years ago, like, you got this, like, don't crack under pressure. It's okay. You're gonna get there and you're gonna grow and you're gonna learn so much. And you're gonna be very proud and appreciative of yourself.
I think one of the biggest things is that on paper we see like so many people being successful in terms of like the awards, but we really don't see like everything that they've undergone in between.
Mm.
So for yourself personally, could you mention some of the core like lows or core challenges that you faced?
Right. So, because back when like I was at the peak of developing this project, I was also at the peak of high school. So I think I was like in the middle of juggling college applications as well as doing this project. And it was right before like the submission for ISEF, which is like the biggest competition that I've ever been in. So like I wanted it to be perfect. And I was also a full-time athlete. And so that night, this is like the lowest point I've ever been throughout developing my project. That night, I was writing my college essays, but also at the same time trying to finish my MMRTD report that had to be submitted that night for ISEF. And I had swimming training in less than 30 minutes. And obviously, oh, like transportation time, and I didn't want to be late. But I was so stressed that that entire Sunday, I had already been holed up in my room since like 10 a.m. and it was nearing 7 p.m. And I was really stressed in my room. I was doing like three things at once. And it got to the point where my dad knocked on my door and he was like, "Hey, like, are you gonna eat? Because it's like you have to go soon, but like dinner's ready." He came in and I was like, I can't, I have so many things to do, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, "You have to like go though." And I was like, "Yeah, I know." And it got to the point where I was so stressed, just started crying. I just started crying in the middle of my room with like my Unity app still open on my laptop and like my college apps also open on my other laptop. Like I was in a mess basically. And I was so stressed out by that. I like broke down in the middle of my room. But obviously, like I couldn't exactly like, do anything about it. I couldn't skip training either. But this is like one thing that I realized during like my entire journey is that even though I was a very busy student, like I had a bunch of different things to do at once, I always used all those different things as an outlet for all my other things. So that night I was really stressed because of MMRTD and college apps, right? But when I got to the pool, when I got into the swimming pool, like I had completely just like MMRTD and college took a backseat in my head. Like it was the least of my concerns. And all I did was focus on like swimming, my routine, my teammates, and everything. And then I came back with like a refreshed mind and I continued working on my report and I continued running my college apps and I managed to submit all of those on time. And so that's how like I combated my lowest point in doing this entire project. And I think you also asked about my highest points,
Yeah.
right? So for me, I will always say it's when I won the awards at ISEF because we back then, like the Hong Kong team, like we really didn't imagine that any of us would win an award, not because we weren't confident in our projects or in our abilities to present, but just because of the sheer size of people at the conference. Like if I remember correctly, it was like 1,600 people. And when we toured the convention center ourselves, it's like, oh my goodness, everything was amazing. Everyone was so innovative. Everyone is so smart. And so we were like, oh, like we're probably not gonna win. And like Hong Kong has never like gotten that big of an award either. And the thing was, my category was translational medicine, meaning like it gets presented at the end because it's like T. And ISEF presents their awards in a really weird way where they go through every single category, but then they present the fourth place, third place, and second place first. And then they go through every single category like that. And then they start from the first category again, and they announce the first place for each category. And so mine was at the very end of the very end. And the entire Hong Kong team, we were just sitting there like, yeah, no, like we're not getting anything. And in fact, like the organizers were also like ready to go. Like they were packing up their stuff because we were like, yeah, we're not winning. And I was low key like falling asleep in my seat in the audience. And then they got to translational medicine and they were like, oh, Ingrid Chan from Hong Kong. And they even pronounced my name wrong. So I was like, oh, that's probably not me. And they were like, and my friends were attacking me, like, dude, that's you. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And I literally woke up and I was like flattening my shirt as I walked into the stage. But it was such a surprise that like the wave of like happiness hit me so suddenly. I actually started crying on stage. It was kind of really embarrassing because no one brought me tissue either, and my entire hand was glistening with my tears. But in that moment, it genuinely felt like all my hard work and all the effort I put into this project has paid off. And like, it's not just to like, oh, show the world, like, oh my God, I built this really cool VR application that can help people, but it's also like it helped me realize like everything I've done didn't just go to nothing. And it like proved to myself that like this is all worth something. And like I'm finally being recognized for that. And that was genuinely like such an incredible experience. And like if I could go back in time, that's like the one thing I want to experience again.
Hmm. Just building a product and actually finally seeing that it is well recognized
Yeah.
solves a true pain point. And I think that's something that brings lots of founders a lot of joy as well. So like
Mm,
speaking about like your low points, because like I keep hearing like many founders they will balance like multiple different things at the same time, right?
mm.
So did you have some kind of like prioritization, or do you have some kind of system to help you track and make sure that you're like on purpose, like that you used in high school or that you're still using right now?
So, um, one thing that I always stand by is Google Calendar. Like that, it's so simple, but it actually works so well. Like I started using it in, I think like second last year of high school because I just realized like, oh my goodness, I have so many things to like on my plate. Like, so I decided, okay, I'm gonna use Google Calendar to plan it out. So I would have like all my training sessions for swimming and then like what time I'd be in school and then what times I wanted to block out for MMRTD. And the way I prioritized it was because I would have like schoolwork and everything on weekdays and training. I can't change that. They're like set times, but I would usually block out my entire Sundays to work on MMRTD. And so it would be like from morning and I just kind of like work on like whatever parts that I felt like needed to be worked on that day. But it really helped because it kind of like just gave me like an allocation of like, okay, Sundays are to work on MMRTD and then I get a break at the end of the day, which is to go swimming. So that's how I balance it out. And as I mentioned just now, like all of my activities are an outlet for the stress I get from the other activities. So like if I were really tired that entire Sunday, I just go swimming and like that kind of like takes my mind off everything and I have fun. And then if I get stressed on swimming, I'll just go to school, have fun with my friends. And then if I'm stressed on schoolwork, I'll just go work on some coding and like go make some 3D models. And that's how I like kind of like sorted out my stress or like balanced everything that was on my plate.
Hmm. I think it's a very super interesting point because I think when people think that you do lots of swimming, right, and you also creating this crazy innovation, crazy VR product, like people will think that, oh, you're doing so many different things, but then when you get to like actually hear it from your own points of view, you realize that this is actually things that you personally enjoy, right, or like kind of living like a more like balanced life, even though many people says
Mm,
if you want to succeed, you shouldn't have a balance. Like you should only focus on one thing. That's a really interesting point of view there. So like with
mhm.
academics itself, like you also managed to build an awesome startup on the side. So what were some of your core systems that you used with academics? Because a lot of us, like if we're in high school right now listening, we heard of like the classic systems, grinding past papers, using flashcards, tutors. So what did you personally use, which worked for you?
So I also hear a lot of people like use flashcards. Low key, I've never used flashcards before. Like they don't really work for me because a lot of the times the only thing I do with them is write them and then I don't use it after that. What works best for me is if I have time, if I gave myself sufficient time, like I would first have a typed up rough like notes and then I would handwrite them again and then like oh do past papers or whatever because me personally like handwriting works best. Like it helps me remember stuff because I'm visually reading it from my laptop, and then I'm like physically writing it, and I'm also reading what I'm writing. So like it's like triple combo, and it works really well for me. And another thing that I did when I like don't have enough time is I would just start by like doing a past paper or like question paper, and then whatever topic comes out, I'll just make notes on that topic. Like for example, when I studied for biology, um like the first question would be like a cell question, and then even if I don't have notes written out or like any notes out yet, I would just write notes for that specific cell topic, and then I'll go to the next question, which is like, oh, like I don't know, something to do with lungs, and I'll just write notes for lungs, and then low key like manifest and hope for the best that similar questions come up in the exam. But yeah, like that's how I do it, because I feel like if you don't have time, the best way you can do is like get familiar with how the questions are asked while also like simultaneously getting a bit of like info in that's has something to do with the question. So yeah, that's how I did it.
Awesome. I mean, for me personally, I like to do lots of flashcards. So I think it really depends on like
Mm,
like how much time you have. Mhm. I mean, I was actually going to ask you more about how you're able to release stress, and like, have you ever experienced a time when like you just don't feel like you can do academic work because you can't really memorize because your brain is really dead? Like, how would you personally?
mm. Um, I feel like literally that's like me right now as well. Like I actually have a math quiz tomorrow, and I was sitting I came to like this like engineering building, and I sitting in an empty conference room right now, and I was supposedly supposed to be studying for this math quiz, but I'd been working all day, and like I actually just finished like a coding homework yesterday, which like fried my brain completely. So I wasn't in the mood, but I feel like a lot of people don't take this seriously enough, but like take a break, guys. Like sometimes all your brain needs is like no more math, no more numbers, or like no more facts, no more biology or chemistry. Like just like give yourself a break. And then you lock in after it and you realize like, oh my God, I can actually lock in right now. But yeah, like so for me, like I genuinely just like take a break. Like I know a lot of people get like super stressed out, like, oh, if I take a break now, I won't have time to like finish it later. But like trust me, you'll be so much more efficient after you take a break, because your brain is going to be loading at such faster speed after you take a break. Like you just need to clear your head a little bit. But if you're not looking to take a break and you just really want to lock in, I would say like try to like simplify what you're trying to do in the easiest way possible. Like rather than looking at it as a big picture, like, oh, I have a math quiz, I need to memorize every single concept. Oh my goodness, there's this, there's that. Like one thing that worked pretty well for me before was I actually did that just now. Like I wrote out like the exact topics of the quiz that I um was going to be tested on. And because when you see something in like a bigger picture, it feels like a lot of things you have to do. But if you write down like the smaller details, like, okay, it's just topic 1, 2, 3, and like 7, 8, 21, 22, then it feels like, oh, it's just small parts that I have to do. And it makes things feel a lot lighter. And I feel like it's easier to work on rather than like just like, oh my God, it's like 10 topics that I need to study.
Mhm. Yeah, that definitely works a lot. Like just breaking things down into a smaller chunk and then
Hmm.
studying them in like different periods. It's like transitioning over to the startup, which I'm pretty sure many people would be very curious about. What were some of the initial ideas that you brainstormed in the beginning, including the ones that you scrapped off?
Hmm. So for me, like during my entire like creating this project, I'd say that I planned it out pretty realistically. So like I didn't give myself like ideas that were really difficult to implement, and rather I like did my research and I kind of knew what I could do with my skill set at that point. So the ideas that I had initially brainstormed ended up being very similar to what I did execute and innovate. So like for example, like the background, the music, and like the activities that I came up with. But like the things I scrapped off were more so like how the activities would have played out. Like for example, currently in my application, the butterflies are set in uh particular positions. It's like an L shape. But in the beginning, I actually wanted them to be like flying around and like fluttering around. That required the user to like move their arms and like visually track them to catch them. But I ended up scrapping that idea because I discussed it with the professional therapists at the care centers, and it turned out that like if it's constantly flying around, it's too difficult for the elderly patients because it requires too much like physical exertion where they have to like constantly like be chasing the butterfly, which was going to be too hard for them. And it actually might stress them out as well. And another idea that I had was having like instructions in the game be voiced by like a flying butterfly that would follow the user around as they move in the virtual environment. But I decided to change that to a virtual human instructor because it feel more realistic in a way. And I also ended up having like some of the patients' granddaughters to voice the virtual instructor's instructions, which honestly make the entire game more wholesome and like more involving of the patients' families. So yeah, I feel like a lot of the ideas that I had but scrapped were like scrapped because I had to make it more usable and enjoyable for the elderly patients rather than like, oh, just going for like a cooler game or like more interesting and fun activities.
Hmm. Like, could you describe like what was the initial MVP for the product? Like, it wasn't like polished yet. Like, what was the initial thing that you presented or that you started off with?
So I guess like you mean like my like key point of my entire project,
Yeah, or like
like the
the
selling point.
yeah, or like no, like the moral of like the beginning of like the project. So for example, like excluding all of these um fancy like features that you've already added to the product. Like what was like phase one of the product, just with the basic elements?
Mm, phase one, I would say was I guess like okay, in terms of technical terms, phase one was literally me trying to replicate Victoria Park. And because back when I was brainstorming ideas for this project, the one thing that I found most important that I wanted to have in this game is like the customizability and like the personalization. So I wanted to make an application that was personalized and specialized for elderly patients in Hong Kong. And so I phase one, like the most basic thing I did was I went to Victoria Park and I took like a 360 picture of the environment, and I went back and I like scoured the 3D modeling websites for the most similar things I could find. And I slowly built that 3D environment in Unity. And that was like the very first thing that I did for this project. And I would say that's what like propelled everything forward as well.
Mhm. And afterwards, you started adding like small features and then talking to the
Yeah.
themselves and then getting feedback. So like
Mm.
with the idea that you talked about how you changed one idea to another idea to make the final product, where did these like changes come from? Like were they mostly from pitch competitions, or do you just like randomly think about it, or do you have some kind of like creative process brainstorming where you like you just sit outside of the park and just think, like let your brain think? I mean, that works for me sometimes.
Hmm.
It's your process with thinking of creative ideas.
For me, it's definitely like a combination of all of those. So, like, for some, I had to do research and I looked into a lot of, like, oh, what do elderly dementia patients actually do for physical rehabilitation? And I remember, like, sitting in my room and watching so many random videos of, like, um, what are they called? Like, physical therapists doing these really slow arm movements. And I was like, is there a way that I could replicate this, but in a more interesting and fun way in my application? So that was one way where like I came up with ideas and how I decided to change them. Because like as I said, right, initially one of my ideas is like having the having the butterflies fly around like crazy. But then after watching a lot of these videos, I realized the pattern was that they're all really slow, and they all follow a specific pattern, like going in an L shape or going specifically from left to right and like within how many counts. And so that's how I changed from the butterflies flying around to having like a like well positioned and fixed L shapes. And then on the other hand, a lot of other changes and ideas that I had was from like judges from competitions because I would be like, oh, like, so right now my prototype has this and I'm looking to implement this. And they'd be like, oh, from a professional and like expert standpoint, I feel like this would be better. And I was able to change some of my implementations or like change like the background stuff or like different songs or music according to what like the professionals suggested.
All right. So, like, speaking more about your experiences with the exhibition and the conventions themselves, and what do you think were some of the core gains that you wish you knew before going to these conventions, which you would recommend anyone to do in this like startup phase?
Mm. Um, I would say like first of all, definitely don't be shy to make friends and like network with everyone at these conventions because like everyone there has a similar goal to you to like innovate something to create something that could solve a problem in this world. And first of all, like those people, like they're really amazing. They're really interesting. And like you already gain so much by having a simple conversation with them, but it's even better if you're able to like maintain a relationship and continue being friends with them after. And you never know, these people could become like potential teammates, really good friends, or like people who can provide you with a lot of advice and guidance in the future beyond just project making and perhaps like in terms of career as well. And another thing I would say is like keep an open mind and like be prepared to be wowed by everything you see because I thought like in my first few competitions or conventions, I didn't really like walk away from my booth at all. I was a bit shy, a bit nervous to like explore more than, I don't know, two steps away from my booth. But after more that I did, I realized like there's so much to learn from these people, and every single idea is so different and it's so unique. And honestly, you get inspired as well. So I would say like definitely don't be shy and like talk to these people and learn more about their projects. And in terms of like student conventions or like student competitions, I realized that a lot of these always offer panels, like career panels or like workshops. And initially I didn't know about a lot of these. So I would really recommend anyone who's looking to go into these competitions and conventions, like look into whether there are any workshops or panels at the event because they're really useful. And again, like you never know, like the people speaking could totally be part of your network in the future and they could really help you in terms of like career and other things.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. I actually went to my first like convention or so-called exhibition like last year in November in Amsterdam. I think we chatted a bit about it, but
Mm,
it was super interesting because like being the first time in like such a large place where you're presenting your own solution, it feels like you're competing with other people as well to get
mm,
panels to go to your own exhibition side. But like afterwards, you realize that these people are basically in the same group as you, right? You're not really competing, you're just having different ideas, separate set of ideas, and
mm.
it might be super useful for you in the future as well. So, like speaking about um, more on the environment, like such as placing yourself in conventions or not only like friend groups, right? Like especially in a place like Hong Kong, you need to surround yourself with, I think, like bigger people to think of bigger ideas. And I think these regional competitions would really help. So, what are some of the most interesting solutions that you've seen, or like some big ideas that you've heard about through these conventions?
So, it's actually kind of hard to remember because I've been to like many conventions and every convention I've been to had so many projects. But um I have a dog, so I was really looking at like the animal sciences section back at ISA, and I remember a really interesting project that was like an autonomous like rescue dog, and it's using the X something in Xbox. It was like they took like a part of Xbox and they used the same machinery for like mapping and encoding. And their entire idea was like, oh, rather than using real rescue dogs um in like terrains or like dangerous environments because it's like potentially harming for them, why don't we replace it with machine rescue dogs that can like map out the area while also searching for people? And it was really cool because they had a prototype too, and it was just like a machine dog like in the convention center, and I just remember like, oh, this is really sick. And then I remember at the Geneva convention, the biggest booth was in the middle of the convention center, and they had a whole like car in the middle of the convention center. And if I remember correctly, it's like they invented this new car that could drive on the road, but like on water at the same time and like travels faster than like a normal boat. So it was like a car boat vehicle thing. And it reminded me a lot of the car from Despicable Me 2 or 3, I forgot, but like Gru's car or Lucy's car. But yeah, I thought that that was like a really cool idea. And um, if we're like talking more like home based, the Hong Kong police station actually has a really strong innovation team. And I thought it was a really great project. Like it was a solution to like rescue missions, and essentially they innovated this wearable Wi-Fi router shield that not only like protects them from um like bullets and whatever, but it was also like a rescue kit at the same time. And because they mentioned like a lot of the problems is like when people get lost in like the mountains in Hong Kong, they can't actually find them because there's like no Wi-Fi or something, like something similar along those lines. And they invented this like thing that the police could wear while rescuing the person. And so those are a few things that I found like really innovative and really interesting.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think one of the common patterns that I'm seeing with like these ideas is like you look at one industry and then you identify some kind of pattern in that industry and then you bring it to another industry and make it innovative. So like I
Yeah.
think what I've seen like most recently, I don't really remember, but I've been like thinking of like some like more ideas on how to make studying more effective, right? Rather than using flashcards
Mm,
and stuff like that. So I've been thinking like why if there's like AI softwares like Suno that you can easily generate music with, why not have another software where you can easily put in like a study criteria that you need for the test,
mm,
generate some kind of melody with like one of your favorite songs and then memorize with that because that's more
mm.
effective, right? Rather than just solely sticking in things that are
Wait, that's so true. Because like we memorize song lyrics like unconsciously and so easily without realizing it. So that
yeah.
would be a great like way as well. Yeah.
I don't think there's really anyone who's doing that. So if anyone's listening,
You'll
maybe
be the first.
yeah, pretty good idea. But yeah, like going back to the overall topic with like this whole startup success, do you think there were any other external like environments which made you successful? Like what I'm actually curious, like what does your parents think about you doing
Hmm. So my parents are like the most supportive people about my project because although they themselves are not coders or like inventors or coordinator or innovators, they helped me a lot in like finding inspirations or new opportunities because like I was like a middle schooler, high schooler, like I wasn't actively looking for competitions to put myself into because I felt like, oh my goodness, like why would I do that to myself? But they were the ones who were like, just like try. Like there's no like you don't lose anything from trying. And like they would send me links to little competitions and be like, hey, like we found this on Facebook. Maybe you should try it. And like, okay, I'll just send in my application. And like that's what like got me started. So I'm very grateful and very thankful for them, especially like supporting me throughout my entire journey and like being there for me when I'm like crying or like stressed about this project. So like thank you, mom and dad. And also in like the lines of like family, obviously my grandmother's the main inspiration behind my entire project. So I'm very thankful that okay, wait, it sounds odd. I'm not thankful that they got dementia, but as in like I'm grateful that like I had the opportunity to innovate a project that could further benefit people who were in the same situation as them. And speaking of more like external factors, I definitely say I'm someone who gets easily inspired and like influenced by the energy around me. So being at competitions or pitching events and conventions were like truly where I thrived the most because everyone there's so motivated. Everyone there's like buzzing with ideas in their head and like everyone's so excited and that really gets me going and I'm like, yeah, like I want to keep doing this too or like I want to go to this panel, I want to go to this workshop and like I feel so inspired just being around people who have many ideas and like are equally as excited as me. So that's definitely like what gets me through it a lot as well. And another thing is like throughout my entire like project and like working on it, I actually collaborated with a lot of different groups. Like for example, um the dementia care centers, I worked with like the families there, I worked with the elderly patients, I spoke to a lot of like professional therapists and speaking with all these people, like they gave me a lot of encouragement and a lot of advice on how I could improve or continue building my project. And like speaking to the elderly patients' families and the patients themselves, it gives me a lot of motivation and encouragement to like keep doing the things I'm doing. So those were definitely the external factors that helped me a lot in these 5 years.
Like one more thing, actually, I'm just curious. Like, what was the social stigma for you? What did your friends think about you? Like, I know in especially in Hong Kong, right, an environment where like not many people are building such crazy stuff, right? And you're
Mm,
probably one of the only ones or only few in your grade who's doing something like outside of school, and that's like like making an actual tangible project, right? Not actually just doing it for an application or like
mm.
just blindly doing it. Like, oh, what did your friends think about that?
So in the beginning, like my friends low-key didn't know about it because like I was just working on it on my own. But when I did tell them, they were like, "Oh my God, girl, like, damn, like, what is this?" And they were really supportive of me as well. And the question I got asked the most from my friends and like my classmates were like, how do you have the time? Because like we have school, and then I had like I did hockey back in high school as well, and then I had swimming, and like a lot of people knew that like my swimming training is like really crazy. Like I trained like 5, 6 times a week. And so everyone was just like, oh, like, how do you have time for that? But like, as I mentioned, like, I would just like block out certain times and like, I don't particularly get too stressed because again, like, my stress gets let out in all my other activities. So yeah, like, I wouldn't say I, like, no one ever gave me a hard time because I was doing this and no one else was. But more so everyone was really supportive and like whenever like I achieve something, like my friends and everyone around me is like, "Oh, congrats." Like, "Oh, that's so cool." Blah blah blah. And so I'm very grateful that I was able to like build a project in such an environment like that.
That's actually super awesome to hear, to be honest. I
Mm,
think with some other cases or like some other people, like I don't think not everyone is like that supportive, like at times, right? Like,
mm,
I guess it depends on like the product that you're building, but if you're doing something like weird, you'll probably have some people who are like envy of you and stuff like that. But I guess that,
mm.
I mean that's more
I
of
feel like yeah, it depends on like how. Because, like, for example, I feel like a lot of people want to do like business or like econ, right? Like, if you're working on a project in that, maybe you'll get more haters because, like, like your competition pool is a little bigger. But like, no one else was doing what I was doing, and like, I want to study cognitive science and no one else was studying cognitive science. So in that way, it's not, we don't see each other as like competition. It's more like, oh, she's doing that and she's doing good, and I'm doing this and I'm doing good. And so it's just like, oh, being supportive of each other. But yeah, I feel like it really depends on like what everyone else around you is doing. Because then, yeah, I guess you'll get like more secret haters, perhaps.
Yeah, definitely depends. I think like if you're talking to someone who's unique and who doesn't really do things that you really are aware of. I mean, this is why I'm doing the podcast. Speaking with people who are doing unique stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I definitely feel inspired in like creative ways. So
Mm-hmm.
just summarizing everything here, you're in Penn right now, right? You're studying cognitive science, have basically a very developed product with using usable customers. What's the overall future vision, like 5, 10 years down the line with the project
Mm-hmm.
and also your life personally?
Um, 5 to 10 years down the line, first of all, I want to be able to bring my project to a higher level. Like, I want to be able to integrate AI, obviously, given it's very big right now and everything. I want to be able to integrate that into my project as well. And I want to bring my project into Penn. Like, I'm currently in the Penn National Alzheimer's Buddies Club, and we visit like care centers in Center City every week. So hopefully, maybe next year, I will try to bring my project there and let the patients there have a go at virtual reality, which is hopefully something that they haven't tried before. And in terms of career or what I want to do, I feel much like others, I haven't really have it figured out yet. But like, I feel like a lot of people think, oh, you guys probably have it all figured out. I don't actually have it figured out. Um, but what I know, like a general gist of what I want to do, I really want to work with people. I want to continue being able to surround myself with like-minded people and always be in a collaborative environment. And given I'm studying cognitive science, I hope that it's something in the way of innovating a new project, working in a team, and contributing to hopefully like discovering more non-pharmaceutical interventions for cognitive impairment, and preferably back in Hong Kong as well. But we'll see how it all goes.
I mean, that's definitely awesome to hear. I'm just curious, like, have you ever had a period where you like doubted yourself? Like maybe like before, like, in high school, right? Like you haven't really gotten to college. And especially I think for many people, like this is one of their more like roadblocks or excuse to not get into startup in like an early age, which is that, oh, I need to focus on academics. I'm not going to be able to have time to do
Mm,
this. And what if my startup fails, right? This is going to go back to ground zero. Like, did you ever have that, doubt in your mind, and how do you face that?
I definitely did. Like, I had a lot of times, and I always think it when I'm stressed, like, oh my God, like, this is not gonna work, or like, I'm just gonna lose, or this is just gonna fail, and I'm never gonna touch VR again. But low-key, like, I just like, oh, okay, well, for me, like, okay, while I was growing up, like, the one thing that I always live by is that everything will be okay. Like, I've always lived by that. So every time I get stressed or like I'm like, oh, this is gonna fail, I just think like, okay, it fails and what? Like, like my life is not over. Like, it fails, okay, and I'll just, if I want to keep doing it, I'll just keep doing it. And if I don't, I'll pour my efforts and focus into something else that I choose to do. But it's all gonna be okay in the end. So when I was like, oh, like, oh, I don't know, like, do I want to continue this? Is it gonna go anywhere? I'm just like, okay, right now, I want to do it, so I'll just do it, and I'll see where it goes. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. It is what it is, and that's okay. And I'll just keep doing something else that I'm passionate and interested in. Yeah, that's how I kind of dealt with it. But I don't know if everyone thinks the same as me. Like everything is gonna be okay, because I feel like sometimes, I guess for some people, it's like something that harder to accept, or like in the moment it's like hard to remember. But that mantra has gotten me through so many different things. Like just knowing like everything is gonna be okay. You're gonna end up where you're meant to
Mhm. I think I really like that motif. I'm gonna start thinking more of that.
be.
Like if you zoom
Yeah,
out and you think about like the bigger picture, right? Like things that you're doing right now is such a small thing. I think even for myself, like so many people forget about that. And
yeah,
it's so much better to get like a mental security that everything's gonna be
mm,
okay. And it's more about the stories that you tell yourself. I always believe that. So
yeah.
Ingrid, I really appreciate you hopping on the Gen Z Fast Lane. I'll link all of your bios in the description for anyone who wants to chat with Ingrid. I'm pretty sure she'll be happy to chat with you. And until the next one, peace out.